welcome today to episode number 6, where we are going to be talking about the concept of that life in all of its form is sacred. So this concept may raise some or call some triggers from certain people, depending on what are your current beliefs, established perceptions, and uncontrollable need to assert that there's only one way to see things. So here we are going to talk about how can we implement in our daily life the notion that all form of life is sacred. Just looking at the concept of life, many can define it in different ways. We know, for example, that in the legal spectrum, life, especially when it comes to controversial subjects such as abortion, can be a very touchy subject where it can be defined legally to say when life starts, when it ends. However, this is not the take that we are going to take here. We are here looking at a spiritual perception and looking at the divine aspect of life. So, there could be two approaches: a very restrictive approach based on life in the physical body and saying simply that your life or a life starts when the being is born, and end when the physical form that we know of that being dies at death. However, the perception and the notion that I'm going to take for this episode is to invite you to have a much broader, larger view of life, and to integrate in that view a perception of the divine. The divine does not have a beginning, it doesn't have an end. So when we look at that from this perspective, we understand that life, while contained in a physical vehicle, such as a body, such as a plant, such as an animal, such as a physical, touchable, tangible form, does not start when the baby is born, nor when the baby dies. From that concept, we understand that what makes and keeps the baby alive is the intrinsic force of life, that essence of the divine placed in each of us, in each of the animated living things on this planet, on this realm that we are living in. And then we understand that an individual, a person, a human being, that the life of a human being does not start when that being enters a physical body. It started well before that, and it continues well after that physical body is gone. And so when we take that principle, it's a little bit easier to understand that this living force that also resides in plants, that enable the plants to feel and hear and communicate with other plants, but also with you, with animals, and with the environment all around, is the same force that also resides in animals and enables them to feel what you feel, enables them to provide you with companionship, to tell you things, to communicate with things, to communicate with you and with the environment. And it is the same beautiful and magical force that also animates minerals, that allows them to vibrate at a certain frequency, and to enable them to communicate with us, with animals, with plants, and with the rest of our environment. So now you see that this force, this last force, which is part of the essence of the divine, can be placed in many things and can revitalize and animate many beings. When you take it from this place of perceiving this force being able to embody human beings, plants, animals, minerals, and so forth and so on, you see that it becomes really much harder to discriminate and to create a hierarchy. It will become quite much harder to say that the force that animates human beings is more supreme than the force animating animals or plants or minerals, because the precept and the notion is that it is the same force embodying different vehicle and expressing itself in different ways. So the notion and the call for this episode is not to stir up all of your belief system or to create any type of controversy over what you believe and over what you perceive, but it's more to invite you to see if this notion of all form of life being sacred could be beneficial to you, could have some good impact on how you perceive plants, animals, minerals, other human beings, and other beings around you. And see how this understanding can help you better communicate in this environment with all of the other beings here with you, without having feelings of shame, feeling of doubt. The other aspect is that the divine always seeks and creates balance, especially when times and moments that may feel chaotic. The divine force will always seek to balance everything. So in nature, we can see this balance between life and the resonance of the sanctity and the divinity in life being ensured by the rhythm taking place in nature. This notion of the ecosystem and biodiversity and the maintenance of balance within the environment is innate. It's something that does not need your intervention. It's something that takes place naturally. And then we can see how all of the different kingdoms interact, communicate with each other, and maintain that balance. Of course, it happens that sometimes balance between certain species at certain times may be thrown off. However, the divine will always seek balance. We can see certain areas where flood will come in and put back order, where drought and fires may also regulate certain beings in that particular environment. All of that to say that there's no need for you to be up and armed when you tend to perceive that a specific form of life may to you be above others. However, when you take this kind of perception, there will be many examples to defeat that kind of notion, to the fact that certain form of life, if they're considered lesser than others, may actually show themselves to have many more benefits not available to other forms of life. That's why it is much more beneficial to look at different forms of life as different, not better than one another. Each of them provide things that the other cannot. Each of them is able to perceive in a certain way that may not necessarily be available to others. However, our greatest strength, our most gracious and beneficial notion is to understand that all living beings, all beings animated with life, are interdependent. Not one form of life is independent from the others. And I think once you understand the notion, you are much more able and open to see how that interdependence has to be regulated. To understand that one form should not be placed above others. To understand that by interacting and communicating and sharing and growing and evolving and understanding your role in this interaction, in this interdependence, the whole system works much better. So what to take away from the notion of all forms of life are sacred? This is simply a call for you to see in your life how you can honor life in your daily activities, in your decisions. How can you recognize the sanctity and the divinity of life? How can you integrate that as well in your daily decisions, in your perceptions and communications with other beings, other human beings, with your plants, with animals, with minerals? Each interaction that you have is an opportunity for you to honor, to recognize, and to celebrate the divine. And when you celebrate life, whether it is an ant, whether it is a well, whether it is another person, whether it is your indoor plants, you celebrate the divine. So the next time you have questions about what other beings in our environment, whether they deserve to be nurtured, they deserve to be taken care of, whether that need of caring for others should be reciprocated, think about the sacredness of life and what life needs in order to be sustained. Think about the order of things and the rhythm of nature in balancing and maintaining order and maintaining and seeking balance at all times. So the next time you have a questions, a decision to make, think about your own perception on how you honor life. Don't be too preoccupied by other people's perception. Focus on yours and implement it in your own life and look at how the shift occurs. This was episode 6, an invitation to affirm, honor, and integrate the fact that all life is sacred.